Get up. We'll do some burning questions in this hour from the AFC, and then we'll jump to the NFC in hour number 2. So Aaron Rodgers, here's your story today. He's expected to visit the Pittsburgh Steelers this weekend and is likely to return to play for them this year. That's according to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. So we've got Domonique Foxworth, we have Dan Graziano, we have Tim Hasselbeck. Nico, we'll start with you. It looks like Rodgers is going to be back as was expected. What is this team's ceiling with him at quarterback? I had a bad feeling he couldn't hear me. I could sort of tell from what was going on in my background. Do any of the football guys hear me? As to the universal sign for no, if no one is responding in my ear. So I'll just tell you right now, I think the Steelers' ceiling is probably even lower than it was before. This is no obvious reason to think this team is getting better. The division, I think, is. If anything, I think they will likely get worse. I'm told Domonique Foxworth is back. Nick, what do you think the Steelers' ceiling is this year with Rodgers?
Yeah, I mean, their ceiling's pretty low. I think that they could go on a good run and possibly make the playoffs and do the same thing they've been doing for a while. But I think the scarier part about them is I think their floor is probably lower than it's been in a long time, because without Mike Tomlin, it seems as if they are not exactly on the same page with Aaron Rodgers, and that defense that underachieved last year is a little bit older.
Graziano?
Yeah, I mean, the feeling with the Steelers is the same as it's been. I mean, they've won 10 games exactly 3 years in a row. They haven't won a playoff game in 9 years. Aaron Rodgers finished 23rd in QBR last year, which is his highest finish in that category since 2021. The Steelers are treading water, and frankly, there's a non-zero chance that Tomlin was the coach that was holding it all together, and this is the year they bottom out. I don't think Aaron Rodgers does a whole lot at this point in his career to ward off that possibility. I think we saw the best we're going to see out of Aaron Rodgers last year. And again, 23rd in QBR, 10-win season, ugly first-round playoff loss. I think when you talk ceiling, that's what the Steelers have, and that's where they're stuck.
What do you think, Tim Hasselbeck?
Yeah, I agree with the guys. Look, I mean, is there a chance that Aaron's better than young players like Will Howard and Drew Aller that, haven't played really in the NFL? Like, yeah, potentially. But I think there's also this element of at some point you need to reset and understand that you need to go find a quarterback of the future. And that doesn't mean that Howard or Aller, are that guy, but at least it gives you a chance to evaluate him and then figure out if you need to find the quarterback of the future a year from now. I think rerunning it with Aaron, as the guys said, look, there's going to be a limit to it, based on what the team looks like. And then I think just because of the changeover, look, I think there's reason to believe that, look, the floor is probably significantly lower as well, which would really make rerunning it a bad idea for the organization.
Yes, I think Rodgers may be the best option they have. That may say more about them right now than it says about him. My next burning question, Graziano, will start with you. I'm telling you right now, one of these three quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, or Joe Burrow, is making it to the Super Bowl this year. Which one are you telling me it is?
I'm going to go with Burrow. And the reason is, I think this is his year to stay healthy, right? It's sort of every other year where he misses significant time with injuries, and he did last year. The Bengals look like they have about the third or fourth easiest schedule based on how their opponents did last year. I believe they only have 4 games all year against teams that had winning records last year. They obviously worked on the defense. They're the only team in their division that didn't change head coaches this offseason. There's a level of stability there right now, and I think there's reason to be encouraged about a team that has shown with its quarterback healthy it can get that far.
Tim, you agree?
I don't. I mean, listen, the Bengals as an organization, I think some of their decisions in terms of how they've built their team, I just don't trust that they would have success. Look, there's obviously change the other two places. I'm betting on Josh Allen. To me, he's the best, most reliable player out of the three. They're all spectacular, but Josh has been healthier. He's been more dependable. He's, so I guess if I'm looking at it in terms of the way Lamar's kind of fallen apart at times late in the year, the way Burrow hasn't been able to stay healthy for multiple seasons, I would put my money on the guy that's just been better, more reliable, more consistent, even though I don't necessarily love the changes in Buffalo.
I got one vote for Joe. I got one vote for Josh. Domonique, how about you?
Yeah, I'm more partial to Tim than Graz, but I think I'm not going to surprise anybody by saying I would pick the Ravens. Like I heard Graz say stability and the Bengals in the same sentence, which threw me for a loop because the organization, despite the fact that they've changed the head coach, the organization that feels like the most stable is always the Ravens. And I think while Josh has been much better quarterback in the playoffs, I think it takes a team to build or takes a team to make a run in the playoffs. And I think that this team has gotten better on the defensive side of the ball, particularly with their addition at edge with Hendrickson, and they've addressed their guard issue through the draft. Like, I like this team a little bit better than I like the Bills. And yeah, the Bengals, that stability that you're talking about is not necessarily good stability. I'm not sure that it's a benefit that they kept all the same pieces in place.
All right, so I got one vote for each of the three quarterbacks, which is exactly the way at this time of year it probably should be. Finally, let me show you the odds at DraftKings.com in the AFC West, where it looked last year, for all intents and purposes, that the Chiefs were falling apart, but in reality, they remain the favorites. They are favored to win the division despite Patrick Mahomes being hurt and despite the Chargers and the Broncos, and candidly, even the Raiders looking like they're going to be significantly improved. Tim, do you agree the Chiefs are the favorites to win the AFC West?
I don't. I sort of think there's so much uncertainty. When you think Patrick Mahomes tore his ACL late in the year, this wasn't a September ACL injury. And so I think that has to be taken into consideration. They really haven't done anything at wide receiver to think that they would be better. You look at, Kelsey's only getting older. Sure, Kenneth Walker's a nice addition, but to me, they've been a defensive-led team and disappointing for a number of years. To me, it's the Chargers for me. Think of the injuries they had a year ago and the season they still had. I can't imagine they're going to sustain injuries the way they did a year ago. A really good running attack, I think a solid defense. I think the Chargers are kind of a slept-on team as we sit this time of year.
Quickly, Nick, who do you like in that division?
Yeah, I agree with Tim. I think the Chargers are slept on in the season, but the preseason, they're always one of the favorites. But I do think he's right. That offensive line will be great if they can stay healthy, especially those tackles. The defense is solid despite losing their head coach to the Ravens, losing their coordinator to the Ravens. But yeah, I like that team to finally make the leap and challenge in that division.
And Dan?
It's tough, but I agree. I think we're all going to I feel terrible that we all agree on the Chargers, who always let you down. But the Chiefs, it's all about Mahomes, and the idea of him coming back and playing week one and being himself right away feels a little far-fetched, might take a little time into the season.
All right, we'll talk about the NFC big questions a little bit later. No one picking Denver in that conversation, which I thought was interesting. Back to basketball next. Philly, a must-win tonight. Are they actually better off without Joel in Game 3? We'll answer that question after this. You're watching Get Up on ESPN. Look what else is pulling.
Marion, you're from the state of Wisconsin originally. Yep. I think Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy's partnership is better for the Packers than it is the Steelers, because I think it ties a bow on that era, and obviously, Smalls, you're a Packers fan, but it ties a bow on that era in a way of no beef anymore. Everybody's good. One day, Rodgers is going to get his jersey retired here. Rodgers is going to come back happily ever after. And guess who's going to be the one speaking and saying, Packers fans, ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy, who still lives in Green Bay, even though he's from Pittsburgh. Like, this is an awesome story of these two reunite for the Packers. Why is it an awesome story for the Steelers?
Well, I mean, it's a start of a new chapter, right? I think certainly there's nostalgia if you're a Packers fan about those two getting together because it didn't end well, right? Clearly there was a rift between those two. They both went their separate ways ultimately. But I think if you're the Steelers, after what happened with Mike Tomlin, you just want to see if there's another pairing that maybe can put you into a different position in the postseason. Can you maybe be a contender consistently if Aaron Rodgers can play at a very high level and Mike McCarthy can coach at a high level? So I think it matters to the Steelers as well.
But is it the start of a new chapter if it's the same guy, same approach, kind of similar timeline? Is it a new chapter if you're still bringing back a quarterback that is not the answer for the future, a guy who made you wait around to sign, made you wait around again, even though you publicly said it's going to be different this time, we're going to have an answer early, and guess what, you didn't. We're in May. And is it the start of a new chapter if you kind of know what your ceiling is going to be capped at?
Yeah, it's an interesting new chapter, like as the angle or theme for this. Yeah. To me, I'm a Mike McCarthy fan. I'm thrilled that Mike McCarthy is a head coach in the NFL. I think he deserves to be.
Especially there where he has roots. I think it's going to be great.
100%. Okay. I think Mike McCarthy is the head coach of the Steelers because they still want Mike Tomlin to be the head coach of the Steelers. So
it's as close to Tomlin as you can get.
Yeah,
is that a good thing?
Well, okay, so let's get into this, Myron. There's a group of coaches that I always associate with one another: Sean Payton, John Harbaugh, Mike McCarthy, and Mike Tomlin. I think all their resumes are very similar. Michelle may like one better than the other. Myron may like the other. Canty may like another. Whatever. But they're all four similar-ish resumes. And if the Pittsburgh Steelers, once Mike Tomlin said, "I'm done," wanted to go in a different direction, I'm thrilled for Mike McCarthy, and I think he'll do a good job. But I also don't think that's going in a different direction. I think they hired the same coach, but just the offensive version of him, and thus they're continuing what happened last year with Rodgers.
Yes, but it sounds on the surface like the perfect solution to the problem. Mm-hmm. Mike Tomlin was respected. Guys wanted to play for him. He won at the highest level. He was consistently extracting the best out of his guys to put them in a position to win because they had winning seasons and they were going to the playoffs. The issue for the Steelers was that they could not solve the question at quarterback post Ben Roethlisberger. So you think, okay, we have a guy in Mike McCarthy who's from here. He understands the Steelers way. He understands what football means to this place and to these people.
No doubt.
He also is a winner at the highest level. But guess what? Unlike Mike Tomlin, he's offensive minded. He can get the best out of a quarterback. I have seen him do it consistently throughout his career, time and time again. So he gives us that stability, that baseline of excellence, while also seemingly being able to provide answers to the problem. Except you're not giving him the tools to solve the answer to the problem.
So let me ask you a question on that then. Would they have been better off if Rodgers just said, "I'm good, I'm going to walk away"?
No, they would have been better off if they were the adults in the room and said, "Last year was great. You were not a distraction. You were consistent. We had a wonderful season with you. But we are starting a new era of Steelers football. We have to be disruptors for ourselves. We have to break out of this pattern for ourselves. It has nothing to do with you or the experience that we had with you. We have to go in a different direction. Even if it seems on the surface like it might stumble a little bit, we have to start preparing ourselves for the future. And unfortunately, you're at the stage in your career where you're not the future."
But there was no future option, I think, Michelle. Like, this was not a good draft for quarterbacks. It wasn't a great offseason for free agent quarterbacks. Like, I don't know where you turn, to me, if you're the Steelers. Like, if you told me there was an immediate answer, if they could assign someone who ultimately changes things for them right away, fine. But I don't know that they had that because of the weak draft class and the free agent pool. So you're kind of stuck with Aaron Rodgers, and at least you know who he is and who he can be, and Mike McCarthy knows that better than anyone. I think, Evan, you hit something that I think is important. What is a good job for Mike McCarthy in year one and Aaron Rodgers? I don't know the answer to that question.
What do you think? A good job for Mike McCarthy? Would you say, Myron? Aaron
What's a good
Rodgers
job? Yeah, what's
Mike
a good
McCarthy?
job for Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers? What can they do to be set when someone says that's a good job?
Yeah, so because I believe that his tenure is an extension of the Mike Tomlin tenure, a winning record. That's it. Like, and there are some franchises in sports that will never bottom out, and I don't blame them for that. It doesn't mean you're going to ever get yourself closer to winning a Super Bowl, but they will never, ever, ever bottom out. And I don't believe the Pittsburgh Steelers are ever going to bottom out, ever. And that's why they did what they did. We're unsportsmanlike.